Hello and welcome along to the Weather Studio Live. I'm Alex Deakin.
And I'm Ada McGibbon. We're here in the Met Office headquarters in Exeter. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, on Twitter and on YouTube. You can, as always, send in your comments and questions. Claire is here monitoring them as they come in.
Hello, yes, I'm Claire Nazir. Please do send in your comments and questions. I'll be answering some of them and throwing some of them over to the lads as well.
And also coming up, we have a guest meteorologist. Nick is here. He's going to answer all sorts of questions, technical questions about exactly why we're getting this hot spell this week. That is what we're talking about today, the hot weather over the next few days.
It's the only thing
to talk about. It is the only thing to talk about. Are we going to break records? Why is it getting so hot? How hot is it going to get? How long is it going to last? And we'll be touching on climate change as well. So a lot to get through. Please do send in your questions. Yep. Where are we starting?
Well, where is the heat starting? It's starting to the south and it's on its way as we speak. Now that hot air is being drawn up because the jet stream is now in a more amplified position. We're always talking about the jet stream, and often when we see some interesting weather in the UK, it's because the jet stream becomes more amplified. It's now flowing well to the north of the UK, and if I rerun that with the temperature layer on, you can see that that helps to draw up this very warm hot air from Spain into France and across most of the UK. Even from the northwest of Scotland, where we've had some very wet weather over the last few days, we're clearing that now, and we're seeing sunny skies break out widely. Now this is into Wednesday, and let's rerun that again, but with the weather fronts on it, because there could be some interesting developments overnight. Now, through the night, these weather fronts move in, clash with the hot and humid air, and bring the threat of some lively thunderstorms. More on that in a moment, but they also have the impact of cooling things down just a smidge across western parts of Britain, and you can see that there, with fresher air moving into the west, but the heat contained across eastern parts of England. So a big contrast tomorrow, but that's not the end of the story, because the hot air returns, in fact, more vehemently into Thursday, and
it's a little low, isn't it? Moving in on Thursday out in the Atlantic. It's just this one just gives an extra shove, doesn't it? It's to give another pulse of hot air arriving on Thursday. Thursday is likely to be the peak of the temperatures across the UK. That is when we could see 37, maybe 38 degrees Celsius across parts of the east. Now, they're the headline temperatures. Not everywhere is going to see that, but pretty much everywhere is going to feel temperatures rising. It is going to be extreme. It is going to be uncomfortable for sleeping. Temperatures by night could also be record-breaking. And tonight, we're going to have, well, if you can sleep at all because of the humidity, you may get woken up by flashes of lightning or rumbles of thunder, because happening tonight, some big thunderstorms heading our way.
A proper light show, potentially starting actually this afternoon in the southwest. You can see the first signs of it there, very small dots of blue starting to appear. These are showers moving up from France, and then they just become more colourful and bigger into Tuesday evening. So yes, South Wales, southwest England, thunderstorms, frequent lightning, hail as well, gusty winds, really lively weather moving north, and you can see these bands getting bigger. Always difficult to nail down exactly where these hit and miss thunderstorms will happen. So yeah, it is going to be a matter of pot luck whether people see them or not, but the trend is for them to move north very quickly, so they do move through quickly. So that means that the heavy rain not likely to cause many issues in most places, but the hail could be an issue because of the size of the hail that could come down in some of these showers, the strong wind gusts when the showers move through, and that lightning as well, the frequent flashes of lightning.
It's a perfect example of why we've got a thunderstorm warning in force, actually, because yes, the rain isn't the big issue. There'll be heavy downpours, but because they're moving through, it's less of a risk. The biggest impacts are likely to be from flashes of lightning, potentially disrupting power supplies, but also large hail and sudden gusts of wind that could be damaging. As we saw there as well, the spotty nature of them, they are hit and miss. So although the yellow warning is large, not everywhere in this yellow warning is going to see those thunderstorms. Classic thunderstorms, they will be hit and miss.
People often misinterpret this as there's a warning, therefore it means there's an increased confidence that you'll get a thunderstorm if you're in the area, or there's a guarantee of a thunderstorm. You're certainly not going to get thunderstorm shaped like that across the country. And you're certainly not going to get a thunderstorm affecting every single location within that yellow area. This is just an indication of the area most at risk of thunderstorms overnight. Equally, you could see 1 or 2 thunderstorms either side of the warning. So yeah, that's the area where there's the threat of disruption due to thunderstorms, lightning, hail, and gusty winds, but always.
It'll be an interesting night. There'll be a lot of tired people around tomorrow morning for one reason or other, because of the heat, humidity, or because they've been woken up by a thunderstorm. So yes, plenty going on. The heat today, mid-30s, likely to be the top figure, and then it does turn a bit cooler, certainly in the west tomorrow. I say cooler, less hot, I should say, in the west tomorrow. But then the peak of the temperatures is likely to be on Thursday, and we'll have more on the outlook into the weekend. How long is this heat going to last at the end of the programme? But first of all, let's get some questions that have been coming in already, because a lot of interest in this hot spell. Claire, what are people asking?
Yes, we've had lots of comments and questions already. Everybody wants to talk about the heat and the hot weather. It's about numbers, really, to be honest, and we'll be talking high numbers later. But is 30 degrees common? Well, we've seen 30 degrees already, and we'd like to see a good swathe of them over the next few days. Certainly perhaps more common than around 20 or 30 years ago. And again, it's something we will be discussing later when we talk about climate change. How do I keep my baby cool at night? Well, everybody's going to suffer over the next few days. And obviously we're not heat health experts here. You should check out a specialist website about that, but certainly a fan on, away from the baby, and keep your curtains drawn during the daytime so you don't get that sunshine in. Another question coming in about, well, if this was the longest day of the year, we had this atmospheric setup, would the temperatures be even higher because we'd have even more sunshine? That's a really good question, and possibly yes, but again, we'll leave that to our Deputy Chief, who'll be talking in a moment about that. So thank you very much for your questions. We'll talk more about the heat and other aspects of it, including the thunderstorms. Keep the questions coming in. Back to you guys.
There's advice actually on the Met Office website, 5 top tips on how to keep cool. We're putting that out on Twitter this afternoon, so if you're following us on Twitter, you should see that. It's got a lot of advice. But Public Health England, we work very closely with them. They have advice on their website as well about staying cool in the heat. And going back to the sun and the temperature, is not necessarily all about how strong the sun is. Obviously, the strongest sun, yes, but the ground will have heated up more in the past month since the longest day. So actually, the highest temperatures we record across the UK tend to be second half of July, first part of August, because of that slight lag. So although the sun's not quite as high in the sky now, the ground, the earth, has had that much longer to warm up. So the highest temperatures at the surface tend to be more at this time of year.
Yeah, and the ground will have heated up elsewhere, like Spain, where the air is coming from. But everyone's asking about numbers, so let's put some numbers on the temperatures. And this is, there we go.
Trigger trouble. Triggers. Everything's a bit too hot in the studio today. It's just a little bit trigger happy. So these are today's temperatures. Quite widely over 30 degrees Celsius. It's going to be the hottest day of the year so far. We will probably beat it tomorrow. And
all of a sudden as well, a big boost from yesterday. If most places are several degrees higher than yesterday. We had 31 yesterday in the east of England, but yeah, a wide area of 30 plus Celsius. Northern Scotland, 26, 27, perhaps 28 Celsius in one or two spots. Just always a little bit cooler there for the far north and northwest, Northern Ireland as well. That's the theme over the next few days, but elsewhere it's just widespread heat. Well, that's Tuesday, and you can see the effect of those weather fronts, those thunderstorms moving through, letting some fresher air in for western areas. For Wednesday, temperatures are back closer to average actually, low 20s, mid 20s in a few spots. Still the potential for 27 in the north of Scotland, around borders as well of Scotland. And then we're getting to the heart of England, where across, say, just to the east of Hull to Southampton, widely 30 plus again, inland from coast. 35, beg your pardon, the top number there for Norfolk. Possibly not too far from Norwich. So the heat shunted a bit further east, and then on Thursday, this is the really interesting one. Widely, the heat returns westwards and intensifies. And, you know, just incredible, first of all, for the widespread low to mid 30s on the map there, from, you know, the far south of Scotland, where we could just about get 30, all the way across most of England into eastern parts of Wales, although the southwest of England, West Wales, cooler, as will be Northern Ireland. But there's the headline number for London, 38 Celsius, the most likely temperature. temperature.
We often get accused of just being focused on the big numbers. Well, you kind of have to just pick out the maximum temperature. We're showing here that the heat is widespread across the UK, particularly so on Thursday across central and eastern part. Widespread heat today as well. But yeah, that 38 degrees, why are we focusing on that? Well, it's just incredible really to be putting a temperature, most likely temperature on the chart that is over a degree higher than the record for July. The record for July is 36.7 Celsius. That's the highest we've ever recorded in the UK. Records going back over 100 years, and we are suggesting the most likely temperature is a degree above that. And there is a chance, 40% chance, that we could break the all-time record set in 2003 of 38.5 Celsius. That was set in August. So the record for July is 36.7. The record all-time is 38.5, and there is a chance that we could beat that. So we'll be keeping a very close eye. And the Met Office are the gatekeepers of all things temperature. We take great pride here in measuring the weather across the country, be it heavy downpours, be it the wind gusts, and particularly when we see these extreme heat days, we measure the temperatures very accurately, and we will have that very latest information about whether we break any records over the next few days. So make sure you're following us on social media.
There's always a margin of error, of course. This is 2 days away, so let's say a degree, perhaps 2 degrees either side of that is probably the margin for error. So yeah, we could always just get under the June record. There's a 20% chance that July record. There's a 20% chance that we won't break the July record. However, I suspect that the vast majority of people won't be able to tell the difference between 38 degrees when they step outside and 36 degrees, or indeed 39 degrees. Well, you step outside in those kind of numbers and it's oppressively hot and it's humid at the same time, so uncomfortable heat.
Fantastic. Yes, let's go and see if we've got any more questions coming from Claire.
We've got an interesting question from Jake Keller on YouTube, and this is something which is quite interesting, and it's particularly going to happen tonight. What is an elevated thunderstorm, chaps?
That is good. That's what we're seeing tonight. So an elevated thunderstorm, a thunderstorm doesn't start. Often thunderstorms brew up from warmth that starts at the ground, and that's where the air rises and whooshes up and creates the thunderstorm. What we're going to see tonight is the thunderstorms start just from higher up, basically, and that's one of the reasons why we're less concerned about rainfall, because the thunderstorm starts higher up. It's an elevated starting position to the bottom of the thunderstorm. That's where the rain comes out. There's more available air for it to evaporate through, so the rain won't be as heavy when it reaches the ground because it started from that much higher up, but it's still likely to produce thunder and lightning and the same kind of thing. And there's a few reasons why you can get them starting higher up. Mountains are one classic reason for it. So it's an elevated thunderstorm.
You often get them in a situation where you're getting the air coming up from Spain, because throughout that column of air from the surface up to the top near the jet stream, it's hot, so at all those different levels you can have enough heat and humidity to spark a thunderstorm, not necessarily just at the surface.
Excellent, thank you for that. Keep those questions coming in, and let's bring our guest in. Nick, come on in. Welcome to the show. I'll just take my phone in case we get any more questions coming in. Now, you've been looking at all kinds of things. I mean, that's your role. Actually, first of all, let's explain to everyone. You've been on the programme before, but not for a few weeks. So just explain to everyone what your role is here at the Met Office and what you do.
No problem. I'm a Deputy Chief Meteorologist. I work in the Operations Centre here in Exeter. I do 2 roles, which is one of them is the medium range forecasting position. So I look beyond 2 days into the future, forecast the weather in that spell. And my second one is the global guidance meteorologist, looking at UK interests overseas, basically outside the UK's borders.
Fantastic. Okay, now we're here to talk about hot weather. The weather's been hot in the past, and just take us back to briefly set the scene for what we're talking about, what we're looking at here.
Yeah, a little trip down memory lane. Some heat waves of the past, but the present.
Some of us can remember them well.
So August 2003, this was the UK's all-time maximum temperature record. I've got the build-up through the 8th, 9th, and the 10th when the record was broken itself. This is surface pressure charts with fronts drawn on, unfortunately black and white.
That's how old it was. Yeah. Black and white back there.
Yeah.
This just goes to show it's a similar kind of setup to what we've got now, as is often the case when we get hot weather. It's high pressure over the continent or just to the east, low pressure to the west, and it's warming up.
Exactly. When looking at
warm air.
When looking at surface analysis, the key thing is almost wind direction. The UK is surrounded by oceans, maritime environment. They're a lot cooler than land, and we often rely on, to get our very, very highest temperatures, a southeasterly flow, which takes advantage of the very narrow Straits of Dover, meaning the air can just jump across the channel with having minimal cooling applied to its lowest levels.
So this is 2003 when we have the all-time temperature record.
Similar, like
fast forward to 2018, so July last year.
Yeah, this was our hottest hottest day of the year last year. So on the surface, it looks relatively similar. You know, high pressure, some sort of southeasterly flow in the southeast, with the warmest temperature occurring just ahead of a very weak surface cold front. But this is quite a different heat wave. Last summer it was a prolonged heat wave, but the extremes within it were generally quite small. I think the maximum temperature was only 35 degrees last summer. Much of the summer it was high 20s, low 30s. As the one that we're going to get this time is going to be a short, sharp snap of a heat wave, and then a return to something slightly more seasonal.
And you've been looking at the differences. Why are there differences? And you've been looking at a paper in particular that's been published.
Yeah, so this has been published in the Royal Meteorological Society's quarterly journal, only earlier in July, so relatively recent. But we have seen some
off the press.
We have seen some similar studies done in Australia and other parts of the world that have led us to this. But it basically looks at the importance of the upper air and descent. So if you have air that starts off at a high level and you make it descend, it evidently pressure increases. And if you increase the pressure on a volume of air, it increases its temperature. Exactly. And it's been shown through this event that many of the past heat waves in the UK can be largely attributed to warming from the descent of air from higher levels of the atmosphere.
So it's not necessarily just the sun heating the lower part of the atmosphere and it just getting hotter. It's actually much more to do with the air descending through the atmosphere and hotting up as a result.
Both play a role, but this study has found that the descent is the primary sort of driver of the extreme heat across the UK. So this is a typical pattern for extreme heat. I've got 500 hectopascal heights here, which people can think of them similar to mean sea level pressure.
So this is a slice higher up in the air. So this isn't the surface pressure. This is the pressure kind of
about 18,000 feet in old money. And because I do aviation forecasting, sorry, I'm stuck in feet.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I think in metric. But basically, we're looking for this upper ridge here, which encourages descent of the air in this region. So that's like the absolute key for maxes, really high maxes in the UK. And when you get there, this is almost a trajectory that the air will take. So its pressure will increase as it drops. Wow. And as the pressure goes down, you can see here the air warms up quite considerably.
If you've just done your GCSEs or your A-levels physics, this will all make sense. If you're waiting for your exam results, this will all make sense, bringing back some memories. But basically, we're looking for this kind of pattern. That's the key
for
extreme heat
in the UK.
And you've done some analysis. This is really interesting.
So some enthusiasts they'll know where these come from, Veta Central. So it's just a very quick way to get some reanalysis. I've looked at some of the hottest days in the past. So I've got on here 500 hectopascal height, which this time is unfortunately plotted as coloured contours, but I've used like a little black pen on PowerPoint just to show you the shape of the upper ridge.
Very latest in technology.
Exactly. So you can see 2003, upper ridge, really high heights there.
You got
perfectly fits it. That was our warmest ever day. Our warmest ever July day, 2015. Very similar pattern. There's the upper ridge, just to the east of the UK. And also our warmest day so far in 2019, although we only made 34. In the UK, they had some extreme heat.
Record-breaking heat in France, 46 degrees in the south of France.
And that looks quite similar to what we're having this week as well.
Exactly, right? And I was just going to contrast that with our warmest day of 2018. The heat wave last year, it appears that the descent played less of a role in that, and it was just a steady cumulative, day on day latent heating. So in the upper air pattern, this 500 hectopascal ridge, you see, is much flatter, much less amplified. We're made well south of the UK. So it emphasises that last year was almost a long duration, but without too many extreme maxima events. But the whole event as a whole was very much extreme, whereas these are much more typical, these short, sharp heat waves.
It's really interesting the way the difference you can get in the summer.
So you get these extremes, you get Spanish heat, effectively. Apart from last year when it was proper homegrown.
Exactly. There are many flavours of heat waves, but the absolute extreme maximum temperatures are often combined with this upper pattern.
To get that extreme, you need that. And that's what we're going to get this week. That's
moving
potentially
through the atmosphere.
This is that same kind of picture. This is the forecast for this week.
Perfect. That's Thursday's 500 hectopascal height. So apologies, no colours this time. I've just been able to plot it as almost what we call ISO lines there. But you can see the upper ridge to the east of the UK extending. So it's absolutely perfect. And we've run some backwards.
What are these? So these are backwards. We've talked about these before. This is basically where the air is coming from that will be sitting across the hottest part of the UK at the surface on Thursday.
Exactly. So we've run it from Heathrow Airport in London, and we've run it backwards 4 days to see where it came from at various different heights. The lowest levels, which is this red, medium levels blue, and then slightly higher levels. But all this air ends up basically in what we call the boundary layer, the lowest levels of the atmosphere. On Thursday.
Where we'll be recording the temperatures.
Yeah, and you can see it originated over Spain and southern France, and it's actually descending from around 3,000 metres, so pretty high in the atmosphere, down all the way, to less than 100 metres on Thursday across the southeast of the UK, and without any input from the sun, without any warming like that. If you assume that this was adiabatically, which is an assumption we make where we almost pretend this is all happening within a container, so there's no heat escaping, no extra heat being added. It's just the pure physics of moving the air from there, compressing it, and it warming. That alone would add 28.4 degrees of warming to this column.
Because of that descent. That's just, I mean, wow, it's amazing.
It's almost like, you could go on holiday to Spain and think it's nice and hot here, I'll bring it home, get up in a plane, capture the air outside the plane, right, and don't do anything to it, and it gets compressed as you go down, your ears pop, and the air gets compressed and it warms up like a bicycle pump.
Yeah, bicycle pump's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
Yes. But they're pressurised aircraft, so it's less noticeable, isn't it? Otherwise, hard work.
That's why Nick is upstairs as a deputy chief,
and we're stuck downstairs drawing the pictures,
drawing the pretty pictures. And we've got one more thing to show. So that's why it's getting hot. That's the air descending, incredible heat. And this is the temperatures.
So we call this a tevigram. Historically, these were radiosondes, which were balloons that went up and measured the atmosphere with height. But we now have models that can generate these for the future as like an SPM. We love them. You get a lot of information from these very simply. But put simply, altitude is on this one. This axis, temperature on this axis, and we're plotting on here dry bulb temperature, or what people would call normal air temperature, and then the dew point is the dotted line. I've taken this profile. This is just across the English Channel. You might be able to see a little white X just under Dover Straits there.
Yeah.
This is on Thursday around about midday, and just showing this very warm nose of air, only about 1,000, 1,500 feet off the surface, where it's already 33 degrees. It means that when this air comes across the southeast UK, this diagram, I should say, also shows energy. You can work it out by areas here, but this tiny little area that I've bounded with purple and red needs to be heated by the sun. That's absolutely minimal. Often when the sun's working, it's having to work on 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet of atmosphere to warm it.
So often when you see these ascents, typically, the curve goes like that, and there's much more energy you need to get to realise those temperatures.
Exactly. This lid means that the heating can be constrained to a very late point in a very shallow layer. And it means with minimal impacts, you're going to reach with minimal effort from the sun and absolute minimal input, the skin can be warmed and reach 36.5 before we even then have to start, heating elevated higher areas of the profile to then go beyond that to the 38.
Wow, fascinating. And also the winds, these are the winds as you go up through the atmosphere, the different wind direction, and that's important compared to the last hot spell that we had, when we had a lot of easterly winds and it was a cooler air underneath, wasn't it? So we needed more energy to realise those temperatures, whereas this is all coming up from the south.
Absolutely correct, yeah. Northeasterly flow from the North Sea meant we had a cold undercut, so the warm air aloft was never realised at the surface, but in this case, very small, but we've got a southeasterly wind, which is almost the minimum, sea track.
So it's got to come. It's just coming straight over land. There's very little impact from the.
Very minimal cooling just on the skin of the air, and I say absolutely rapidly on Thursday will it be able to reach the mid-30s with no effort at all.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Really fascinating stuff, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us. That's absolutely brilliant stuff there. Really great analysis. Thank you very much, Nick. You probably have lots of questions about that. I know I do as well. But any more coming in, Claire?
Yeah, somebody on YouTube is asking, can we talk in terms of Fahrenheit as well? Well, 38 degrees Celsius is just over 100 Fahrenheit, so that's worth as a ballpark to remember for Thursday. Thunder and lightning, how many seconds after lightning does a thunder occur? Well, if you count the number of seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, divide by 5, you get the number of miles. So for 5 seconds, it's 1 mile. That's a rule of thumb. It's not absolutely correct, but it's about that. Obviously, light travels a lot faster than sound. Other questions coming in about global warming. Is this extreme heat going to be put down to global warming? Is it going to become more common? Thank you very much, Brad from YouTube. We'll be talking about that in a moment, and I know Alex and Aidan have a very interesting stripy map or graph to show you where it really depicts how the globe and how the UK has warmed over the last 100 years or so. Does all the concrete make London feel hotter? Well, it does. It's the urban heat effect, but certainly during times like this where you get a lot of very high temperatures, plus all the heat from the buildings as well, and the fact there's more concrete and the sun shines down and heats concrete much quicker than, say, the sea or darker surfaces, say, like grass. Yes, that's why cities tend to be a lot hotter than maybe the rural countryside or along the coastline. Another question coming in about thunderstorms. A lot of questions about thunderstorms, actually. Does the land alter where the thunderstorms are? Well, that is a good question. Obviously, mountains force the air upwards, which allows the air to rise even further. And obviously, sometimes we get different wind directions depending on where the wind, if the wind's over the land or the sea, and we can get convergence lines for that where the air meets, and that can create storms as well. But this one is just a plume of very warm air which is migrating its way northwards, and that's why the warning zone is so broad and so wide, because they could pretty much be in the air. The air is very homogeneous at the moment. Any others? Flying insects, flying ants. Well, we talked about that on our weather snap last week. That's our podcast. Why are there so many flying ants around at the moment? Well, one reason is the air is so warm and humidity levels are very high as well. So it's a combination of both. It's a mating season, and the reason why they swarm is to increase the chances that they will survive another season.
Wow.
There you go.
Top insect knowledge there from Claire. That's fantastic. Yes, it was really interesting last week. Our radar was picking up those flying ants across parts of the south, so that was a fascinating bit. Go back and listen to the weather snap. There'll be another one out this week as well. We're talking about the hot weather. Great question there. A lot of questions coming in about the climate, so let's deal with that a little bit as well, because we always get these questions whenever temperatures are extreme, significantly above average, whenever we get torrential downpours, unusual extreme weather events. The questions always come in: is it to do with climate change? Now, the standard answer is we can never, without doing what's called an attribution study, you can't just say that one particular event, one hot spell, is definitely to do with climate change. But what we can say is that the globe has warmed by a degree in the last 150 years. The UK alone has risen by 0.7 degrees Celsius in the 10 years from 2008 to 2017 compared to the 30-year average. So if you're raising the average temperatures, when the extremes occur, because they're always going to get extremes, if you raise the average temperatures, then it's more likely those extremes are going to be even more extreme. So you have greater chance of breaking those temperature records. Attribution studies are where scientists look at a specific hot spell or intense rain and do a lot of analysis on them and come up with a number and say how much more likely or less likely they are due to man-made climate change, the influences of humans in putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And although we haven't done one for this, because this hot spell hasn't really started yet, let alone finished, attribution studies were done on last summer, 2018, extreme heat, and that showed there was a 30% more likely. 30 times more likely. The last summer was 30 times more likely than it would have been in pre-industrial levels because of man-made climate change.
Yeah, because people always talk about 1976. That at the time was the hottest summer on record, and it wasn't surpassed until 2003, which was joint with 1976 as the hottest on record. Then we had 2006, joint again, and then last year. So these summers do appear to be becoming more frequent. They're still relatively rare, but they are becoming more and more frequent because of the increase in greenhouse gases.
Attribution study for last year also concluded that last summer, by 2050, will be seen as an average summer. Will just be seen as average. So that is kind of the trajectory that we're on. And the UK climate summary for last year will be out next week. So stay tuned for that. We'll have the very latest on the state of the UK climate. That report is being published next week, where it looks at the extremes of UK weather and the weather trends over the decades, the climate change across the UK.
Nick, who's still with us sitting over there, he was saying yesterday that, we're simply getting a southerly airflow this week, and yet these extreme temperatures may be realised in years gone by. You get a southerly airflow like this and you're more likely to see temperatures of 32, 33 degrees. So it seems like there's nothing particularly unusual about this week's heat, apart from the fact that we're just drawing up very hot air from the south, which we've done plenty of times before, but this week the max temps are higher.
Yeah, let's have a look at some of the charts actually that kind of demonstrate the rise in the temperatures.
If you've not seen one of these before, this is a design graphic done to show a sort of global average temperature for every year for the last 100 years or so.
Yeah, since the industrial age.
And you can see the sort of temperatures represented by blues and reds.
Professor Hawkins doesn't he? There you can see them. So this is a chart showing London and Glasgow and the number of days in a given year where the heat wave threshold has been met. So that's the new definition of a heat wave. Again, you can see that on our channels what the definition of a heat wave is. Basically, for London, it's 28 Celsius. For Glasgow, it's 25 Celsius, and it shows the frequency, the number of times that heat wave temperature, number of days in a given year. And it's not a big enough sample to really pick out a trend because these are extreme events. That's the whole point of the heatwave definition. It's not going to happen all the time, but you can it does look as if they are more frequent. But a better way of showing it, the next graph showing the maximum temperatures across the UK plotted year on year, and you can see, so these are the extremes, the maximum temperatures in a year plotted across the whole of the UK, and you can see a definite trend there from 1960 all the way to present, and you can see that those extremes, those highest temperatures recorded, are on the increase, 0.8 degree rise in the 10 years, again from 2008 to 2017. And these are the kind of stats that State of the UK Climate Report will also bring out next week.
But of course, the UK weather is complicated. It's changeable. We get winds from the north. They still bring cold weather occasionally. We still get wet weather in the summer. It's the global average temperature that is clearly rising. June was the warmest June on record globally, and July, some scientists think, could be the warmest month on the planet. So on average, the planet is certainly warming up. Strong scientific and clear scientific evidence for that. The UK weather is a bit more complicated, but we are seeing these heat waves occurring. So yeah.
Any more questions coming in, Claire? And I guess one of the questions a lot of people are interested in, how can they stay cool in this heat?
And in fact, you know, this is a great concern to a lot of people when it comes to how hot is it going to get. And the way your body reacts to heat is not just about the high temperatures, it's about humidity as well. And when you get high temperatures and high humidity, your body almost battles against it. So most of us can be quite comfortable in temperatures around 20, 21, 25 degrees Celsius. If you add on a higher level of humidity, like what we're going to see over the next few days and experiencing right now in this studio, it's very warm indeed, then your body does act against it. It pumps more blood towards the skin to create more sweating, to normalize or modify its own internal temperature. And the internal temperature of a body is around 37 degrees Celsius. If that changes by about a degree or so, then you could actually get quite ill. And a lot of people do suffer from heat stress during a very hot spell, or even heat stroke. So obviously stay cool in this hot weather. Head to the beach where we do get some refreshing sea breezes through the afternoon. There's more information on our webpage. If we cast our minds back to what we were talking about earlier and the heat wave of 2003, a lot of people actually died because of the heat wave across Europe and UK. Across Europe and the UK, it was around 50 to 70,000 people actually died because of heat stroke and heat stress related to things like heart attacks, asthma attacks, etc. In the UK, that figure was around 2,000. Because of that, Public Health England, the government, created a heat stress index where it warned professionals, that's health professionals, when the temperature was going to go over a certain level, to expect more people to be arriving at A&E and to be warning the general public that the heat could actually affect lives. So since then, 2003, we do have that heat index, and at the moment, if you check out our website, it's on amber, which means you just have to be very careful when you're out and about, and this actually extends right the way through from today through to Friday. So have a look at our website. Obviously Public Health England have got a lot of information on, and stay cool in this heat. It's only going to rise even further. One question coming in on YouTube, somebody's actually going, my phone's gone, but someone's heading off to Belgium at the moment, and the temperature in a camper van. Now, the temperature across much of Belgium and France is going to hit record-breaking levels as well, not only in the UK. We're sharing that air from the near continent. So here, temperatures could actually be in excess of 40 degrees Celsius. So yes, it's staying cool in that heat. I don't know how you do that if you're camping, but certainly I think it's the BMX Championships happening in Belgium right now. Good luck if you are competing, but yes.
Yes, I had a message from Jill Peters, who's a broadcast meteorologist in Belgium. She said the first time ever she's put a 40 on the chart for them. That is extremely. Their record is 38 point something. So again, they are forecasting record-breaking temperatures. That's all-time record as well. The Netherlands record is also likely to go as well because they're also getting. It's the same air, basically the same air, and they don't even have any kind of water around them to cool them down a little bit. So yes, they are going for some extreme heat. Just a couple of other really good questions that are coming in. Samantha Vigo on Facebook. Hi, can you pinpoint where tonight's storms will be, or is it purely guesswork? Well, it's not purely guesswork, Samantha, but as is always the case with storms, they are somewhat hit and miss. There's a really good analogy that we use. We sort of put a boiling pot of water on, or put a pot of water onto a hob, heat it up, and you know there will be bubbles. So we know there will be thunderstorms, but just exactly where they will be is impossible to say at this kind of stage and range. The best thing to do is download the Met Office app, and you can track them then using the rainfall, because it tells you where the rain has been over the last 6 hours. So you can actually go back in time, track them. You'll be able to watch them coming up from France, and then you'll be able to say whether you're going to get a direct hit, because they'll follow a similar path. So that's the best thing to do with that one. And just one other really quick question. Where was it? I've forgotten it now.
Oh, I've got one here. Add tunes on YouTube saying, do record breaking.
That was it. That was exactly the one.
Well, here we go. I'm going to ask you two this.
That was exactly the one.
Okay, all right. Do you want to answer this?
Add tunes on YouTube. Does record breaking weather excite weather forecasts? It's quite a difficult balance, but we are meteorologists. We're presenters, so we're excitable anyway, but we are meteorologists and we love weather. And when the weather gets extreme, yes, we can tend to be, and people often accuse us of getting overexcited and being too enthusiastic about incredible heat. I am not looking forward to the temperatures over the next few days being over 30 degrees, and yes, climate change is very serious, as we have addressed. So please don't confuse our enthusiasm for meteorology with excitement about incredible temperatures, because it definitely isn't that. We have a job to do to get the message out there. It's a very serious message as well about the heat, as we've discussed with Claire, and about climate change as well. So we're just trying to get the message out there. We are not that. We are excitable people, so apologies if it comes across as being too enthusiastic.
It's amazing to see some really experienced meteorologists in the Met Office. Been here decades who've never seen weather patterns like the one that we're seeing later this week. They've just never seen heat like that heading towards the UK. Really experienced scientists and meteorologists who aren't as excitable about us, who are they just find it incredible. Yeah, with all that much experience. But if you're not looking forward to the heat, and many people won't because it is so extreme, how long is it going to last, I guess, is the next question, which we'll really quickly touch on. That's a big question that I guess we've got more confidence for how long it's going to last in the west. Certainly this cold front here, this is later Thursday, it crosses the country, but you can see it slows down there. Friday could be another hot day across eastern England, fresher air coming into western areas. But this is where it becomes really uncertain. Later this week, into Friday and the weekend, it's all about the position of this weather fronts and the low pressure systems to the west and how much they clear. And they could just linger in places, bringing a threat of thunderstorms, particularly across central and eastern parts of the country, whilst something more average returns to western areas. So it's through the weekend that we're looking at how much of this breaks down, the breakdown itself, any thunderstorms that happen through Friday and the weekend, and how much of the heat lingers across eastern parts of the country. Actually, the weekend is quite uncertain. At that
yesterday, this little low was coming in, wasn't it, across the southwest, and it was going to bring heavy showers and much cooler air. But now it's further south and just open the door to that heat perhaps coming back in. And if you just zoom in there a little bit, actually, because notice the front never really clears across Scotland, eastern Scotland in particular. If this setup's correct, through the weekend, could see some very high temperatures, but also potentially some very heavy rain on that weather front across.
We didn't mention very quickly the warm nights and the potential record-breaking nights, particularly Thursday night. So after that very hot day, some parts of the UK, well, we could see the UK's warmest night on record if the temperature doesn't dip below 24 Celsius, and that is possible across eastern England. And then into Saturday as well, that warmth, that humidity remains across eastern parts of the country and northeast Scotland as well. So Scotland also has the potential of seeing some very humid nights at the end of the week and into the weekend. And depending on the position of this, some thunderstorms. So we will have a full update on the...
You'll have the 10-day trend tomorrow, so that will have more on it. We'll probably be a bit more certain by tomorrow. It's the kind of thing that Nick will be looking at, and he'll be briefing us tomorrow on the outlook and what's most likely or not likely to happen. So that'll be in the 10-day trend forecast with you. That is available on Wednesday afternoons on Facebook and on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Give us the thumbs up. There is another channel, Learn About Weather as well. You can search on there for all kinds of things about jet stream, El Nino, and all kinds of stuff on YouTube. We have the very latest on the temperatures through Twitter every day, so make sure you're following us on there, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram updates as well. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a long one, but we've had a lot to talk about.
Minutes.
Only 40 minutes. But thanks for all your questions. Big thanks from Claire and from Nick as well, and we will see you next week.